The Empire had finally done it. We had defeated the rebellion, we defeated Solid, and we finally reclaimed the Guild Forge. Operation Guild Rise immediately began, and our country was finally back up and running. The Empire finally took its rightful place as number one in the server. We were to be feared once more. The destruction in the Guild Forge was major, but we had the ability to pull through. We had the motivation to do it, because we now knew that what we fought for was finally accomplished. We now knew that if we kept going, we'd finally rule the server to the end of its days. We knew that if we kept going, we'd put our mark, finally, in the lore. Finally, nobody opposing us. Finally, we were on top, and finally, the Empire could rise up to its maximum proportion. The thing was, we had lost all the other countries that had supported us. We lost Olympia, we lost Gehenna, and we lost Duelist's country. So the Guild Forge had to rely fully on itself because the Veil once again was no longer supplying the Guild Forge. We had to start from scratch. But as I said earlier, we had the motivation to do the task. This job would be the hardest job ever completed in Gale SMP history, the most destroyed country. You may argue that the Motherlands had it worse, but the Motherlands didn't have as many buildings as the Guild Forge, and the Guild Forge was more spread out than the Motherlands was. But the Guild Forge took it hard, and it was not great. All the villagers were dead, all the resources were gone, half the island was flooded, and the other half of the island was made out of cobblestone. It was going to be a very difficult job. Even with the motivation we had, it would not be easy, but we still pulled through. If you're an OG, you may recall Llama Frog. Llama Frog was one of the few members to ever say that he was a part of Autodel. Autodel was one of the most legendary Season 1 countries there was. Now, when Autodel had first fallen after the Battle of the Six Skulls, Llama Frog took over, and the Motherlands decided that it didn't like Llama Frog there. Why? Well, because Llama was becoming stupidly powerful. The Motherlands feared Llama. It was the first time I ever expressed fear ever, and I, had to take care of it, so I murdered Llama. We skipped 2 years later, and apparently Llama had kept his grudge. He didn't like me, he wanted revenge, because he saw our actions as aggressive and morally wrong. So he spent 2 years training for PvP. He spent 2 years holding his grudge, and when he finally saw that Season 3 had begun, he finally took his time to strike back, and he joined Season 3. And so, secretly, under a new name, he decided to join Season 3 without announcing that he was Llama. He went under the name Kingslayer. This name sets fear already, and he had trained for 2 years and held the grudge as well. And now he seeked revenge. Anybody who worked with me would also be killed. He saw anybody that worked for me as simply a being that likes Gale. And so he wanted them dead too. That's right, Llama wanted to take down the Empire himself. However, he knew this was unrealistic. He knew he needed an army to do so, and the Empire had just taken over the world. Who the hell would want to fight the Empire now? The Empire is simply just too powerful. Well, Llama saw this as just one thing to laugh at. Now, when the Empire caught wind that this random guy had joined the server, nearly gotten maxed out, and was starting to recruit people into a group, including his own friends, the Empire was getting a little concerned. But the Empire never reached out to Llama. Meanwhile, Llama was getting maxed out tools and weapons, armor, and potions, and getting ready for war. He proceeded to recruit some members of the SMP, like Sin. Sin was working with the Empire, but Sin had betrayed the Empire and switched sides. Llama was preparing for war. But not only did he train for PvP, he also trained on how to grind. He also trained on tactics, strategy, and he even trained on 1v5s. He trained for every scenario because he knew that fighting me would be one of the most difficult tasks he could possibly go in. Also, he trained in psychology, attempting to set a fear of God into everybody. He also attempted to get this presence that he was already a big bad. He tried to show everybody, hey, I'm going to kill all of you. And the first thing he did was send a message essentially declaring war against the world. For a questionable reason, Kingslayer immediately took Lusitania. Now, we think he took Lusitania because Lusitania was something that could still be salvaged by the Empire. We could have still used those resources for our ruined country. So he decided to take it and name it his official headquarters. From there, he proceeded to invite his friends and take new members out of the Empire and into his little group, and take members generally in the server that weren't in the Empire in his group. He was slowly starting to rise, getting a 15-man group on his side. However, basically none of them logged on, and only Sin was his second in command. Now things were getting a little spicy because he was getting more confident, and finally, officially, he declared war against the Empire. Now, the Empire took this as a joke. Some random guy just joined the server, got a little bit maxed out, and now declared war against the Empire. Whatever. Brush over the shoulder, this is no big deal. But little did we know, this was bigger than all of us. The reactions were a little different, but this exact message from Kingslayer was sent to everybody. As you saw, Duelist was interested in joining, Woody said bugger off my, everybody else was laughing at Kingslayer, but little did they know that Kingslayer was serious. Everybody thought, look at this guy sending everybody a message about killing Gale. Ha, so funny, right boys? Right? And now the odds of taking down the Empire and killing me and all of my teammates seemed actually probable. For once, I saw something in Kingslayer that I hadn't seen in anyone in a long time. I did recall that I had feared Llama in the very past, but this was 2 years ago. This is completely different. I'm way better than I was before. What is going on? Why am I getting a little scared of this guy? Something seems a little off about him. Shortly after all the messages, he sent out a speech.
I've had a perfect life up until the Motherlands came. When I found out what Gale had done to me, that I am not going to take it. And I have to use the resources that I have, the wherewithal that I have, the ability that I have, the knowledge that I have, to make it right. I am not walking away from it. Being a coward by doing what I'm doing, because without a doubt, I'm doing what you have done. I am lying, I'm conspiring, I'm keeping things secret, and it's going to happen, but God built me for this job. You had to take me on in the past. Well, I'm gonna take you on by myself.
He then took his army and all of his men to the Guild Forge, and Gale surrendered. The fear had somehow taken over Gale, and Gale surrendered the Guild Forge to Kingslayer. And this was the starting point of the final war of the SMP. All of the Empire members had immediately ran back to Veronia, but Kingslayer somehow knew the location of Veronia and led a raid. Veronia was destroyed. And now members were flocking out of the Empire and joining Kingslayer. Kingslayer had just single-handedly become the most powerful man in Gale SMP history, and the first man to finally take down Gale. It was a heart-stopping moment when everyone found out that Gale had surrendered. Gale then promised to give Kingslayer the crown of the Guild Forge, and that's exactly what happened. Everyone watched as Gale surrendered his crown to an opponent that never even fought him. Suddenly, everyone was against Gale, realizing that he was a ruthless dictator, that he had leashed on everybody, and that he treated everyone like a pawn. But the members who didn't feel this way stayed in Veronia, and those members would cause some chaos, but everybody else was on Kingslayer's side. For some, it was a turning point in a story that always was the same. Gale would always win, and for once, it was over. The endless cycle of insanity had finally come to a close, with a new man rising into the fame. It was truly one of the most glorious moments in Season 3 history. Some of the members who held grudges for years were joining Kingslayer. Tengu, one of Gale's biggest rivals in Season 2, joined Kingslayer. Dolus, another rival of Gale's in Season 2, joined Kingslayer. Everybody who wasn't forcefully with Gale immediately switched sides, but Gale's closest friends, his true allies, stayed with him. But it all wasn't happy, at least not for Gale and his friends. For Gale, this was depressing, and he refused to log on for 2 weeks, and he never logged on the server. He only logged on when his friends wanted him to do work, but it was all just crumbling down.